Hello, everybody. I'm trying to show you my presentation. Bear with me a minute, please. Of course, we tested all this prior to the event and it worked fine. Can you see my presentation now?
Yes, we can see your presentation, yes.
Fantastic, fantastic. And you can see it in full screen mode?
No, we can't see the full screen mode. You have to click on the full screen. We have the full screen.
Okay?
Yes, everything is okay. You can start.
Sorry
Perfect.
about that. So once more, hi everybody. I'm Olivier Ponti. I'm VP for Insights at Forward Keys, and in the coming 30 minutes or so, I will tell you all about Forward Keys and how we got creative with big data. In fact, the whole business, our whole business, has been built on a different way of looking at data. And this is what we'll talk about today. So Forward Keys, it's a company that is a travel analytics company. We're B2B, so if you've never heard of us, that's normal. We're not targeting people outside of the travel industry. And we're based in Valencia, Spain. The company started 10 years ago with two guys that we're working for global distribution systems. I don't know if you're all familiar with what a global distribution system is, but in a nutshell, it's a technology that puts supply and demand in contact so that products can be sold to customers. Travel products. So on the one hand, you have airlines, and on the other hand, you have travel agents. GDSs, global distribution systems, are that piece of technology in between that bring demand and supply together. This is how they make business. They make business with airlines and with travel agents, online or offline travel agents. And this is a very, very lucrative business, which generates a lot of data. So 10 years ago, the two founders of Forward Keys thought that this data that was generated when people were booking their trips could get a second life, that this data could be interesting for a whole array of professionals within the travel ecosystem. They came up with this idea, and global distribution system said, well, you know, why not? But really, there's not much business to be made there. So we can provide you with the data and you can give us a share of what you sell, but we're not going to run this ourselves. If you really believe in this idea, just go for it and we'll put the data at your disposal. So this is what they did 10 years ago. They founded Forward Keys and they collected information from all the global distribution systems worldwide. And the company grew and grew and grew. So this is each year we have this this event when we have our colleagues from all over the world coming up so that we can physically meet and discuss the current status of the company and the future of the company. This was the team in 2016. This was the team last year. Unfortunately, we couldn't hold our meeting in 2020 due to the COVID situation. But as you can see, the team is growing. At the moment, we're around 60 people, mainly based in Valencia, but we've got a presence worldwide because we really work on a global scale. So what this picture says is that we're very smiley and nice people. No, but what it says is that there was a business in this idea because the company grew and it's now a 60 people company. So what is this all about? What do we do? Well, the core of the business is still the monitoring of air reservations. To this, we added tickets very recently, but I'm mainly going to focus on reservations because this is about being creative with data, and this is how it all started. Little by little, we added additional layers of information, additional data sets. So we also have information about air capacity, so all the seats that airlines are adding up to the market. We look at meta searches, so people searching destinations prior to their trip, and we look at events. That can be a holiday, that can be COVID, that can be a terror attack. Those are things that we also track because we know that they impact seriously on travel. Going back to the origin of forward keys, when I said that the idea of the founders was to give a second life to data by providing this data to other companies than the traditional companies that the global distribution systems were working with. This is what we can see on this chart, which shows the traveler's journey. And it's clear from this visual that the traveler is not the same person in the different moments, in the different phases of his or her trip. And it is someone that will bring value to a different kind of operator. So at the beginning of the trip, the traveler is mainly a searcher, is searching for information online. Then he will convert in a booker. Then he will be at the airport. Maybe he will shop. Will be a shopper. He will have this trip, and then he will be at the destination where he will have some value for another set of operators. Maybe he will rent a car. Maybe he will shop on the spot. He will be a guest in a hotel or an Airbnb or wherever. And then he will fly back and maybe spend some more at the airport. And as you can see, each time it's something a bit different that is needed for each of the operators in this business. This is what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about how we created use cases for those different operators in the business. But before we do this, just a remark. What made the success of Forward Keys was this idea that now that we're able to use big data in real time, we need to have the technologies in place to bring this data to the end users in record time so that we can share fresh insights with them. The world is still, even with the pandemic now, very, very much connected. So anything happening anywhere in the world, anything of significance has an impact not only in the place where this event takes place, but around the world. And people will want to know how this event impacts their business, positively or negatively. So you need to be able to provide them with this piece of information extremely quickly. We've developed technology that makes it possible to make the data available 48 hours after the fact to anywhere in the world. This is a major change for many of our clients, for many operators in the travel ecosystem, because often think of destinations, for example, they will rely on national statistics that are always backward looking and that come with large delays, typically 3 to 6 months. This is not data that you can easily use to make decisions now. And once more, it's usually data that is backward looking. The good thing with reservations, with bookings, is that it's something taking place now, but it's all about a trip to take place in the future. So when looking at bookings, in fact, you can also project yourself into the future and anticipate demand. So being able to monitor how the travel market is changing in real time or near real time with a 48-hour delay is a major asset for us and has turned into a major asset for our clients. So I'd like to use in this presentation a number of very tangible cases, giving you an idea of the diversity of usage that we can make of this data. Unfortunately, when looking at 2020, there's only one thing popping up over and over again across the world. It's the impact of COVID. So let's start with this, and then we'll put this aside and focus on different use cases. For this event taking place in Poland, I've decided to focus on the impact of COVID on a destination like Poland. Not only Poland, actually Central and Eastern Europe. So what you can see on this chart is the number of new tickets that have been issued for an international trip to Central and Eastern Europe since the beginning of the year. You can very clearly see the drop in the number of tickets being issued. So it's basically going back to zero for a number of months. And then from the end of May, it starts picking up again with reactivation of the travel sector in the summer, and unfortunately going down again. So basically, we're at around 20%. We were in the midst of the summer at around 20% of the business that was made last year in number of international tickets. So how does Poland perform in this whole situation? Pretty well, actually. I know it sounds strange because if you're in the travel sector, if your business is linked to the travel industry at the moment, you're probably going through a very, very difficult time. But think of it, it's worse in most other parts of this region. This is what we can see in this chart. Poland is in red, and as you can see, it's overperformed over the summer. Compared to not only the regional average, but also to other competing destinations like Hungary, Austria, or the Czech Republic. I think that one of the key assets of Poland is that it's managed to remain open during most of the season, while in other countries like Hungary, for example, or Austria as well, there were some tougher approach regarding travel restrictions, and this discouraged international travel. The other thing that we have learned from this crisis is that travel restrictions are extremely important in the recovery pattern. Travel restrictions, imposed quarantines, and the likes. This is what we can see here with the example of both searches that people perform on the internet and tickets being issued for a trip from the UK to Poland. And as you can see here, from the moment that is beginning of June that Poland announced that it would reopen its borders, we saw a spike both in number of searches for a trip from the UK to Poland and in the number of tickets that were issued. And when on the 30th of June flights to and from the UK were reopened, then we can see again a spike. We could see activity during the summer, and unfortunately it's dwindling now. And on the 1st of October, the UK removed Poland from the safe travel list. So I'm afraid that from now on, this is going to be only going down until the situation changes again. So this is the kind of insights that this booking data or this ticketing data can enable to get an understanding of how a given destination, in that case Poland, is impacted on by this crisis. So it gives us an idea of the scope of the problem, but also it provides us with the possibility to put these figures in a more global context and to compare how Poland is doing compared with the rest of the region or some key destinations in the region. I hope it's a bit clearer now what Forward Keys is doing. Now I'd like to move to in time and in space as well to show you more examples of the relevance of this booking data. And we'll go back to the Hong Kong protest that took place last year. What's interesting here is that we looked at the Hong Kong protest at different moments in time. And we realized that even if we would keep asking the same question, in that case, what is the impact of the protest. We would see different answers popping up as the crisis would evolve. So at the very beginning of the crisis in Hong Kong, we could see that the impact was very moderate. Very, very moderate. It was a 6% decrease. But then as the level of violence increased and as the media coverage of the demonstrations was increasing, we could see that this crisis was mainly a local event turned into a regional event and even an international event. And we reached this point when some of the key source markets for the destination, in that case here we're focusing on mainland China to Hong Kong, we reached a point when there were more cancellations than bookings, and the crisis became very serious for all tourism professionals in this area. We work with theme parks like Disneyland Hong Kong, with a lot of operators in this area, and for them it was really important to see how, as the crisis developed, they were losing different segments of the market. So they constantly had to adjust their marketing activities, their messaging, to make sure that they would target the right people at the right time and still manage to run their business in a very difficult situation. Another example of how the travel situation can very swiftly change is what we saw last year, again, with Taiwan. In the middle of the summer, the Chinese government decided to suspend individual travel permits to Taiwan from mainland Chinese citizens. This was a political decision, basically, and the reaction of the market was immediate. All of a sudden, we saw not only a drop in the number of frequent individual travelers to Taiwan from mainland China, but a huge spike in the number of group visitors going to the destination. So basically, Chinese people from mainland China kept traveling to Taiwan, well, on a lesser scale, of course, but they traveled there in a different way. All of a sudden, they wanted to go there as part of a group. So if you are traveling, if your business is located in Taiwan and you're working with mainland Chinese traveler, clearly you need to adjust so that you can accommodate group travel, because this is where the business is going to be from now on. So again, what is needed here is a very swift turnaround, and what you need is good data to understand how the market is changing. Another example, we remain in Asia for the moment, and we're going to focus on terror attack. And here we're looking at the Easter bombings that took place during the Easter period. And as you can see, there was an immediate drop, again, in number of bookings, a situation that lasted for a while when there were still more cancellations than bookings, and then a stabilization of the business very much below the levels of the previous year. So here, clearly, Sri Lanka did not manage to recover fast from this crisis. They did not manage to convince the public opinion that the destination was safe again, and they are still struggling with this as we speak. So here, again, the example of an event that is shaping travel to a destination, but also travel to different places within the region. The data we work with, so that raw material bookings, can also help us put recovery trends in perspective, comparing recovery in a given situation with recovery in similar situations. So we also work with a number of destinations in the Bahamas. Last year, in the Caribbean. Last year, the Bahamas was very severely hit by a hurricane, the Dorian hurricane, and they wanted to know how far they were to recovery. So we compared the recovery trends in the Bahamas to Puerto Rico and St. Martin when they had been hit by very serious hurricanes just a few years before. And we could see that the Bahamas was doing pretty well. That comforted them in their strategy, their communication strategy, which was to say, let's let's stop the communication on we need help, we need relief, etc. as soon as possible, and let's communicate on we are open for business. It's just 2 of the many islands of the Bahamas that have been hit, and this has been quite successful. So we worked very closely with the Ministry of Tourism of the Bahamas to help them fine-tune their communication strategy using good data and monitoring the impact of this communication. We've talked a lot about negative events. Let's have a look at a few positive events like sport events. Here we're looking at the Cricket World Cup that took place in the UK last year. If you haven't heard of it, that wouldn't surprise me. There's only a very limited number of countries around the world being really interested in cricket, maybe understanding the rules. India is one of those markets, really big fans of cricket, the Indians, and this is what we can see here on this chart. The event took place for a long period of time, and as you can see, the number of Indian arrivals to the UK was extremely high compared to the previous year, plus 34%, so a major increase, and each time the Indian team was playing, there was a spike in arrival. Interestingly, the length of stay for these visitors was very high as well, more than 20 nights. So typically the Cricket World Cup is a good event for the tourism industry because it's attracting people that stay for a long period of time. We've seen something a bit similar in Japan last year as well with the Rugby World Cup, where we could see a strong increase in arrivals from countries that were participating to the World Cup, and the average length of stay in Japan was 12 nights, which was as well pretty well for this destination. So using air booking data, you can not only anticipate how many people will come to your destination at a given period of time, but you can assess the economic impact that these visitors will have because you have information about the overall length of stay of these people. They can move around from one destination to the other within Japan, in this case, but still you know when they enter the country and when they depart. So that's very good for econometric models. Now, what we do as well is provide market expertise to our clients so that they understand better how things are different from one year to the other. Typically, for some key source markets, you have calendar shifts. That's the case for the Chinese New Year, which is not always taking place at the same time. So you can see how this is impacting on arrival dates, departure dates, etc. So it helps operators to fine-tune their activities and anticipate the needs in terms of staff, in terms of products that you want to put in your windows, because not everybody buys the same products. And you can also see that each time you change something in your regulations, there is an impact. Here I decided to take the example of Serbia, which provided visa exemptions to Chinese people. That was back in 2017, and all of a sudden you can see the number of Chinese arrivals soaring more than 200% immediately after the fact, and over time as well. So impact that is lasting for these destinations. So that's just how important it is to monitor changes in the market and the impact of those changes. What can also happen is that a company, an airline goes bust. This happened last year with Slovenia, that lost one of its flagship carrier. All of a sudden, the destination was cut from a number of key source markets, and they had to readjust, and they needed information real fast on where it would be best to re-establish air connectivity. What we also do with the data is warn about shortcuts. So let's start with the case of Rome, for example, and more specifically of the Rome airport. Let's imagine that you have a shop in the Rome airport. What you want to know is when exactly people arrive or when exactly they will depart. And this is changing over time because airlines readjust their capacities, they readjust their schedule. And basically, if you decide to do this year pretty much the same as last year, at the same period of time, you're going to miss business. And this is what you can see here with the example of Rome, where in that time slot, the morning time slot between 7 and noon, last year you had an increase of 68% in Q3. If you can't anticipate this, clearly you're going to lose some business. So that's important to keep the pulse on the travel sector as it goes. But we can be even more creative with the data and not just take it as it is, but massage the data, combine it with external sources of information. This is what we do with a number of shops, outlets that are even outside of Rome. And they provided us with information regarding their sales, and we crossed this information with arrival data. And we could see that the mix of sales and travel profile scenarios combined with machine learning could help us find the right model that would help those retailers anticipate their sales, looking at the booking situation. So here it's a very complex algorithm that has been developed, but that's basically combining the end result, that is what people buy, the status of sales, with bookings, and trying to see what correlations can be found, how you can fine-tune these correlations so that you end up with a model that will help you predict your sales in the future. Another use of data is crowd management. At the moment, the situation is such that there's not much overcrowding taking place, but it used to be a major issue, and it will be a major issue in the future again when travel fully has restarted. I lived and worked in Amsterdam for 10 years. And just before leaving Amsterdam, I wanted to organize a farewell party. That was at the end of July. And I invited friends from all over Europe to come to this party. And I realized that prices were extremely high for accommodation at that period of time. So I decided to have a look at what data could tell us about this period, what happened there. My birthday is on the 29th of July, and I could see that this was a very bad timing for this destination, because that week, early in the week, there was a major congress taking place, the AIDS Congress. And typically, what hoteliers and accommodation renters had anticipated was that people coming for the Congress would stay over for the weekend, because this is typically what happens. So they decided to raise prices to the max during the weekend. Had they had access to forward keys data, they would have realized that the huge majority of these people coming for this Congress were also leaving before the weekend. So they ended up with a city that was half empty because prices were way too high compared to the demand. So they ruined my birthday party, but most importantly, they miscalculated because they didn't have access to the right data at the right time. Sydney, Australia in general, is making a different use of the data, but it's still very much linked to crowd management. They're looking at bookings from some of their key markets, and then they adjust their marketing campaigns. If they see that Sydney is full, then they decide to put the focus on Melbourne or Brisbane, for example. And if Brisbane is full, they switch to a different part of Australia. So that's how they use booking information to anticipate demand and therefore adjust their messaging. There's plenty of ways of using the information. You can use it to decide, if you're a car rental company, which kind of car to put on the market at which moment. This is the example of Madrid during the Easter holidays last year. They could see that what they mainly needed were really small cars. That's what the demand was all about. But most importantly, they knew that it was not small cars that were needed, but small automatic cars, because there was a huge increase in demand from The US and those guys, they want automatic car. So that's just how, that's showing how data can be turned into very concrete, very tangible decisions. Same thing for brands. Think of Louis Vuitton, for example. They sell very specific products to very specific markets. So they need to know if it's going to be more Chinese people visiting their shop in Paris, for example, or if it's going to be Americans. They will not buy the same things. And because they can anticipate which products to put in which store where, hedge funds and financial organizations can also anticipate the financial results of Louis Vuitton or other major brands. So what we're realizing is that the more we serve the more markets we serve, the more different use cases we discover to the data. And the more forced we are to be creative in providing the right piece of information, the right data nugget to the right people. This is how we survive, and this is how we help people plan ahead, whether it's the casino, who needs to know who's going to come because people play different games and have different expectations, or it's tour guides who need to know which languages they should put on the offer for their tour at which moment of time and when they should offer discounts. Or it's the museums asking, hey, is this working what I'm doing with groups or not? Should I put more the focus on individual travelers? What can I expect from the upcoming season? Can be hotels needing information on demand, because typically people will book their plane first and then their accommodation. They need to have the information in advance so that they can adjust their prices, be the first one to drop the prices if demand is low, or be the first one to increase their prices if they know that demand is high. Brands also, and media agencies, they need to know at terminal level which commercials to put. If you want to sell high-end computers for American business travelers, for example, that was the case for Dell, and you need to know in which 20 terminals worldwide you should show your advertising. That's information that we can provide as well. We give the big picture. If there's a terror attack somewhere, we know not only how it affects the country, but how it affects other countries in the surrounding areas. We know how that's the case of the Dominican Republic. There were some mysterious or unexplained deaths last year of American tourists. This had a terrible impact on American visits to the Dominican Republic, but this had a very positive impact on visits from Americans to surrounding destinations like Jamaica, the Bahamas, or Aruba. So again, if you get the big picture, you can make the right decisions. I see I'm running out of time, so I'm going quickly on this. We had the World Cup in Russia in 2018. We could see that Chinese visits to Russia increased very significantly during the World Cup, and they decreased at the same time in Europe. And when the World Cup was over, the number of Chinese visitors to Europe increased again. So it's a limited number of people traveling, but adapting their travel decisions to a moving landscape. I'd like to finish on two examples showing that sometimes data can do magic. The first one is an example I'll take from Spain. A few years ago, there were big tensions between Spain and Brazil because there was this campaign in Brazil, in the Brazilian media, saying that Brazilians in Spain were not welcome, that many people were driven off from the country and counted as illegal immigrants, while in fact they were travelers. The Spanish government didn't know how to react to this, so they turned to the Minister of the Interior saying, hey, guys, what's happening here? And the Minister of the Interior said, well, it's business as usual, you know, there's nothing wrong. Then they turned to the Ministry of Tourism, or the equivalent, who works with us, and they could say, well, there is something wrong. Look at the data. There's a very significant drop in bookings from Brazil to Spain. So we need to communicate. We're not going to communicate on hey guys, there's no problem, everything is going as usual. No, we need to be proactive, we need to communicate to solve the problem. So this is a miracle, because usually when the Ministry of the Interior and the Ministry of Tourism have an argument, the Ministry of the Interior always has the last word. In that case, that was not the case. And one thing I'm quite proud of, when there was the water crisis in South Africa, we helped both the Cape Town authorities and the national authorities to work together, because those guys, they don't talk to one another. And when there was the crisis, they finally realized that it was not a Cape Town crisis, it was a national crisis, and they needed to talk together to solve the issue together, and data help them to do this. So I've come to the end of this presentation. I know we've covered a lot of ground, but I hope you've understood that this very simple data that we had at the beginning, the bookings, that was totally useless, or almost useless for global distribution systems or the airlines or the travel agents in the end, because what was interesting for them was the money generated by these bookings. This data has managed to get a second life, a third life, a fourth life, whatever, because we've managed to find many different use cases to these pieces of information, and we've managed to build a successful business out of it. So I hope this has been useful and a bit inspiring, and I thank you very much for your attention. Please do not hesitate to connect with me on LinkedIn if you want to know a bit more. Thank you.